The sentence fell into the afternoon like a stone into still water, heavy enough to change the shape of everything around it. She sat beneath faded summer bunting in a quiet American garden, sunlight touching her white dress and the metal frame of her wheelchair, and the truth settled on her shoulders before anyone else could carry it. The man she had waited for was not coming, the future she had rehearsed in her mind was unraveling, and yet, in that fragile moment when hope seemed to thin to a thread, something unseen began to pull tight, steady, and strong. If you believe that kindness still matters, that broken stories can be rewritten, and that everyone deserves a second chance at love, please take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Her name was Abigail Turner, and she had learned to measure time differently since the accident. Before, time had been loud and fast, full of work deadlines and road trips across California, late-night laughter and early morning coffee. After the crash on a rain-slick highway outside Sacramento, time softened and slowed, marked by physical therapy sessions, the rhythm of medication alarms, and the quiet bravery it took to wake up each morning and face a body that no longer obeyed her. The doctors had been careful with their words, offering statistics and clinical hope, but the truth had settled in slowly and stayed. Abigail would not walk again. The world had not ended, but it had narrowed, and she was learning how to live inside its new borders. The garden belonged to a community center in Oregon, where Abigail had moved to be closer to her sister after months in rehabilitation. It was supposed to be a small gathering, a modest celebration of a fresh start. Folding tables stood on the grass, decorated with jars of wildflowers and homemade pies. It was the kind of place where laughter usually came. Easily, where people believed in simple joys. Abigail had agreed to attend because she wanted to prove to herself that she was still capable of showing up, still capable of being seen. She wore a dress she had chosen carefully, something soft and hopeful, something that reminded her of the woman she had been before everything changed. The man who was supposed to come had once promised her forever. He had visited at first, holding her hand with trembling devotion, whispering plans that felt like anchors. But as weeks turned into months, the visits grew shorter, the excuses longer. Life had resumed its pace for him, while hers had been rearranged into careful inches. The day of the gathering arrived with no message, no explanation, just silence heavy enough to bruise. Abigail felt it then, a knowing that rose quietly and stayed. She was being left behind, not because she was unlovable, but because loving her now required a courage he did not have. Matthew Collins noticed her before he knew her story. He had come to the community center as a volunteer, someone who fixed broken chairs, carried boxes, and tried to stay invisible. Matthew was the kind of man people overlooked, steady and unremarkable, with a past he did not often share. He had lost his wife to illness years earlier and learned how grief could hollow a person out while still leaving them standing. He had built a careful life around service because it gave him something to hold on to when faith felt thin. That afternoon, he noticed Abigail not because of the wheelchair, but because of the quiet gravity she carried, the way sadness and dignity seemed to coexist in her posture. As the afternoon wore on, the garden filled with polite conversation and cautious smiles. Abigail listened more than she spoke, her thoughts drifting between the life she had lost and the one she was afraid to want. She had worked hard to accept help without letting it define her, but moments like this tested that balance. She wondered if love was something she was still allowed to hope for, or if it belonged to the version of herself that could run, dance, and climb into the passenger seat without thinking. The question pressed against her chest, unanswered and aching. Matthew found himself near her table, pretending to adjust decorations that did not need adjusting. He sensed the weight in the air, the unspoken disappointment settling like dust. Without knowing exactly why, he stayed. He listened to the spaces between words, to the way Abigail's smile faltered and recovered, to the resilience that did not ask for pity. In his own quiet way, he understood waiting, understood what it meant to prepare your heart for something that might never arrive. Over the following weeks, their paths crossed again and again at the community center. There were no dramatic confessions, no sweeping gestures. Instead, there were shared moments that accumulated into something meaningful. Matthew helped Abigail reach books on high shelves without making it feel like charity. Abigail listened to Matthew talk about his late wife, honoring her place in his life without jealousy or fear. They spoke about faith, about doubt, about the strange courage it took to keep loving after loss. Slowly, the air between them warmed. Abigail's struggle did not disappear because someone new showed up. There were days when her body ached with phantom memories of movement, when the world felt cruelly designed for people who could step over curbs without thinking. She battled frustration and grief, sometimes retreating into silence because explaining hurt required energy she did not always have. Matthew did not try to fix these moments. He learned to sit with them, to offer presence instead of solutions. In doing so, he reminded Abigail that her worth was not measured by what she could do, but by who she was. Matthew, too, faced his own fears. Loving again felt like a betrayal of the past, a risk he had promised himself he would never take. He worried about becoming someone's burden, about failing to protect a heart that had already been wounded. But each time Abigail laughed at one of his dry jokes, each time she spoke about her dreams with quiet determination, something inside him loosened. He began to believe that love was not a limited resource, that honoring what had been did not prevent him from embracing what could be. Seasons shifted, and with them, something inside Abigail began to heal, not because her circumstances changed, but because her perspective did. She started volunteering at the center, mentoring others navigating life after injury. She discovered that her story, once a source of shame, could be a source of strength. Matthew stood beside her, never ahead, never behind, offering support that felt like partnership rather than rescue. Together, they redefined what a future could look like, one that made room for both scars and hope. The garden where it had all begun bloomed again the following year, brighter and more alive than before. Abigail returned, not to wait for someone who would not come, but to celebrate the life she had reclaimed. Matthew was there, carrying the same quiet steadiness that had first drawn her in. The bunting fluttered in the breeze, and laughter filled the space where silence once lingered. It was not the ending Abigail had imagined before the accident, but it was honest, earned, and deeply rooted in love. Just before the story ends, we have a special request for you. Please comment below with the words, "Everyone deserves love," if you believe that no circumstance, no injury, and no loss can take away a person's right to be loved. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that love often arrives in unexpected forms and quiet moments, please engage with this video. Like it, share it, and let us know how it made you feel. Your support helps spread stories that heal, inspire, and remind us of our shared humanity. Abigail learned that love was not about being chosen by someone who fit an old dream, but about being seen fully and cherished in the present. Matthew learned that opening his heart again did not diminish the love he had known before, but expanded it. Together, they proved that broken paths can still lead to beautiful places, and that in a world quick to walk away, staying can be the most powerful act of all.